Hey, boys and girls, how are you? Have you had a good week? Well, guess where I am? I'm at the back of the church or behind the piano, and there is a stained glass here. And you see this beautiful lady? You've seen her before. Look at her. Isn't she pretty? She's holding she's holding a something very special. And what that is, it's a light. It's a special light. And you had to, in those days, you had to put oil in it, and then you light it, and then it would light up. And if you get close to it, and when we all come back, I want you to come over here and look at it. When we get close to it, you can see the little flame on the end of her lamp. And so she lit that lamp. Now, inside that lamp is oil. And as long as you have oil in the lamp, you'll have a light. Isn't that right? Some of you may have seen that maybe when you go camping. Sometimes there's some special lamps like that, and they use the oil today even. We use that today. Well, this lady is a bridesmaid. Now, have you ever been to a wedding? Yeah, you have, haven't you? Maybe you were even in a wedding. Maybe you were a flower girl or a ring bearer or something like that. Well, this is a bridesmaid, and a bridesmaid takes care of the bride and anything the bride needs. Now, when I got married, I had 6 bridesmaids, and they helped me with a lot of things. And they would get me the flowers I needed or the boxes of anything that I had brought, and they would just help me with everything. If I needed them to go out and talk to somebody, one of my guests, for me to tell them something, they would do that because that's what they do. They're there to help the bride. So this lady is there to help the bride. Now we're going to talk about some more bridesmaids that were with her the day that this is the stained glass, and it's about a special something in the Bible in Matthew. So I'm going to walk over here, and I'm going to tell you the story right now, and then we're going to talk about something else before it's all over. You remember when we talked about lessons? Isn't that right? And we talked about Jesus always telling stories. And they were stories that would have a lesson or a point to it. Well, he would tell this story about the 10 bridesmaids. Remember, not the bride, but the bridesmaids that helped the bride. And there were 10, and they were going to have a big wedding. And so they were all excited, just like girls are. Girls are real excited, aren't they? Well, 5 of those girls were very grounded, down to earth, and they were very, they did everything they were supposed to do, and they had their lamps, and they had their lamps filled with oil because they knew that they needed to be filled. Just like you fill your car up with gasoline to make sure you always have gas in your car. Well, the other 5 girls, guess what they were doing? You know how girls are. They were probably just chatting away and talking about all kinds of things, and they might have been talking about what they were going to do next week, and all kinds of things like that. And they didn't pay any attention to the fact that they needed to add some more oil to their lamps. They just had what was in their lamps, and it wasn't going to be enough. Well, it seems like in those times, sometimes the groom or the man that's going to marry the bride, sometimes he might have come from a different place. And so this one wasn't there yet. And the girls, those 10 girls were supposed to meet him. And then they were supposed to go to the church. And, he hadn't come. He wasn't there. So the girls got sleepy. And they said, well, we're just gonna take a nap before he comes, And so they did. And then all of a sudden, one of them happened to, I guess, wake up and say, there he is. There's the bridegroom. And so the girls all got up real fast, and the 5 girls that had really been prepared, you know what they did? They got their lamps, And the other girls were like, oh, we don't have enough. Can we borrow some of your oil? Just give me just a little bit, just enough so that we can get into the church. And, those girls were like, wait a minute. We took care of our things. You take care of yours. And I want you to go back into town and you find that man that sells the oil and you buy enough oil to put in your lamps and come back. And then, then everybody will go into the church. So those 5 girls that did all the talking and they weren't paying that much attention, they went to try to get some more oil. All right. The other 5 girls went to the bridegroom who was out there waiting for some kind of escort to take him into the church. And they had their lamps and they could see because, there were no lights. We have street lights, don't we? All they had was the moon. And what if it had been a night that was cloudy? You couldn't see anything, could you? So there they were with their lamps. And they walked into the church with the bridegroom. And guess who was there? Jesus. And you know what he did? He shut the door and would not open it. And it wasn't much longer that the other 5 girls came with their lamps. They had to buy the oil, They weren't ready. They weren't prepared. And they go and they knock on the door and they said, let us in. And Lord Jesus was behind the door. And you know what he said? No, I will not let you in because you were not ready. You were not prepared. That's what he said. But right now, I know that you're thinking, gee, that sounds a little mean that he wouldn't open the door. But remember I told you when Jesus told a story, it was always so you would think about what he was saying. And what he actually was meaning in that story was always be ready for me to come. You will never know when I come, and you need to always be ready. When Christ comes back to the earth, when he comes back for us, we need to be ready. And we need to be always doing the right things in that ride. You bet. And the 5 girls were. But the oil, that's really not what he was talking about. He was talking about following the 10 Commandments, doing what Jesus has said. Now, the Boy Scouts learned a lesson when they read that Bible, I'm sure. And the Boy Scout motto is to be prepared. And it's the same thing. That's what Jesus said. And they took that message from Jesus and they used that as their motto. Are any of you boys out there in the Boy Scouts or the Cub Scouts? Well, you might be. And don't you say be prepared? You bet. Well, I want you to think about it when you say it because that's from Matthew. You learned a story. You learned a lesson, didn't you? All right. So I think Peter's going to pan. Pastor Pete is behind the camera right now. He's going to pan this, and that means he's going to move that camera up so you can see the camera one more time. And so know that when you look at these stained glass windows in church, they are stories that Jesus told. And I want you to come over when we come back, and I want you to walk over here. Remember, it's behind the piano. And I want you to walk over here and look at this and think about it. How many bridesmaids were there? There were 10. How many were wise? 5. How many were foolish and didn't do what they were supposed to? 5. Now, I want you to remember this, and I want you to always, always be ready. Be ready for Jesus and be prepared, okay? All right, we'll see you next time. Love you all.